Hi everyone, today we're going to create a simple block print style illustration that you could use as a standalone art print or as a repeatable block for a pattern. This block print style is super trending right now as a reaction against all of the AI art and digital art out there. This is harkening back to that old handmade traditional feel that we all love. I'm Liz Kohler-Brown. I'm a surface designer and hand letterer, and I love sharing my process with other artists and designers. I'm going to be drawing a simple sunset in this project, so feel free to follow along with me or choose your own object to draw. In this iPad Art Break series, I share short tutorials to help you make sellable art, so go ahead and click subscribe if you want to get a notification every time a new one comes out. And let's dive right into the project. So I'm going to start out here on a square canvas that is 3000 by 3000 pixels. You can work at any size here, but that's the size I like because that's about 10 by 10 inches in print. So you can do any kind of composition you want here, of course, but I'm going to keep it simple with a sort of a landscape. So I'm going to do a sun, and then we'll have some waves here. Maybe some interesting waves that kind of wobble in and out. And my whole composition is going to be the shape of a diamond. So that's going to be like my block print shape is a diamond, but of course you could also do a shell. Maybe we should do a shell because it would just be a nice rounded top, but you know, go with what you want here. I think I'm going to stick with the diamond. And so once you do that rough sketch, you can create a new layer. And I am using the Everything Bagel brush set. So if you want to use the same brush set, you can download it right below this video. So now I want to make this a little more tight so I can start doing my final sketch. So I'll click the wrench symbol, canvas, turn on drawing guide, edit drawing guide, and bump that all the way up. So we basically just have a big plus symbol on the canvas. And then I know where to drag my points. So I just want to do basically point to point, and I'm going to do 4 of those. And this doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, this is a loose block print style, so don't worry if you're not perfectly hitting that point. These can really be loose diamonds. So now I'm going to start sketching in my shape. So I'm going to grab a different color. This will be my sun, and I'll put down one finger to make it a perfect circle, and then we can change the size. So you might consider playing around with where your sun's going to be. So that would be one idea. Let's duplicate that and make the first one invisible, and consider one could be over here on the side. So if you'd rather do a landscape where it's on the side, you could do that. So go with your gut here, and you know, you can try different compositions. So this isn't the last chance you'll get to try this. So just choose something and move on. So now I'm going to draw some waves, and I'm trying to keep these varied and fun. And I'm going to just cut my sun off right here. So it'll actually be like a straight line cutting off right about there. And then the water, still got that blue, we'll cut off from here. So we're just going to kind of play with ideas for breaking up this space. And that's what block print is about. How are you going to break up the space? And you know, even if you are a traditional block printer and you feel like this is total sacrilege to do digital art as a block print, consider that this would be a great way to not waste linoleum on a project that you may not end up liking. So this doesn't have to be your final composition. This could just be, you know, a test, just something you're playing around with. So now that I have my basic sketch, I'll make my original sketch invisible. Just take one last look at that, and you know, you might still consider, like, would I rather do that sun up in the corner? Would that be a little more fun, or do I want to stick with my original? So this is where I take time to just iron out that design, but I'm pretty happy with how this looks. It's got that looseness and playfulness, so I'm going to go with it. So next we need to start carving out of our block. So There are, of course, a few different ways you could do this, but what I like to do is just drop a color on a new layer. So I've got a brand new layer, just dropping color on there. Then I can merge my sketch, and if you don't want to lose your original sketch, you might group the sketch and duplicate that group. And then you just have this sketch that you can use that doesn't mess up your original sketch. So I do like to save every single layer just because sometimes I need them for projects or licensing. So I'm going to keep that layer safe down here in this group. And then this is just all the sketches merged onto one layer as a duplicate. So I'll tap white as my color, alpha lock that layer by swiping 2 fingers or tapping it and tapping alpha lock, and then tapping fill layer. So now I just have a white sketch on a black background. I guess this isn't black, it's blue, but you get the idea. So I'm going back to the Everything Bagel brush set, and then you can choose a brush. Of course, it's going to vary based on what kind of style you like. I think I'm going to grab this rough inking worn texture, but you could also grab, any of these would work depending on what kind of style you want. And I also have a specific Woodblock set that goes along with my new Woodblock class. So if you're looking for various tips, round versus sharp and round, things like that, I have that all in my block print class. So check that out if you want to go a little bit deeper into this, but for now we're just going to be using that Everything Bagel brush set and keeping it simple with the fluid ink brush. So we're just going to be erasing on this layer, and the way that you erase will kind of vary based on what you want to achieve. So for example, I could either erase a solid shape, like we could say, okay, we're completely erasing this sun, or do you see how I'm erasing and like intentionally leaving some marks? The cool thing about that is that you end up with a sort of a loose, playful block print style. So you can either do them rounded or directly across like this. So you have to decide here, would you rather have it solid or carved like this, or would you like to have certain directional carving marks? You can go any direction with this. There's no right or wrong way to carve a block print. I'm sure there's some block printers out there that would say, actually, yes, there is, Liz. But, as far as I know, you can experiment. Art is all about experimenting, and even if someone tells you that there's only one way to do it, then that is now your job to figure out the other ways to do it. That's how I see it anyway. So I'm just gonna put these waves in here, staying within my diamond. And then what could we do for the sky? I feel like we could just do some marks for the sky. So I definitely recommend you keep this kind of playful and loose, and maybe even experiment with 3 or 4 ways of so-called carving this block. There's not necessarily a perfect way to do this, but I would say that if you don't try a lot of different ways, you're probably not going to find the best way. So we'll call this version 1, and then maybe I'll speed up my camera while I do a couple other versions, and then we'll choose from those. So that's a cute little block, but we've still got this outer area that needs to be removed. So I'm going to get a slightly larger eraser and then come through with that, and I'm keeping it loose. I'm not that worried about like the perfection of this shape. In fact, I'm going to let it be a little bit wobbly and loose, and then remove all this on the outside. So I'm going to be left with a block, and it's either going to print a lot of material or a little material based on how much you actually carve. So take your time here, play with your carving style, decide what you want this to look like, and then next we'll move on to printing it. I'm going to zoom in here and round off these edges a little bit. I think it's just going to look a little prettier if I've got some nice round edges rather than being super sharp. So this is going to be my version 1, and I'm going to take a minute here to create a couple other versions, and I invite you to do the same thing, and then we'll meet up with our finished blocks at the end. So with this one, I've decided to do something totally different. I've cut out the sun by using the freehand selection tool, circling around that shape, dragging 3 fingers down and clicking cut and paste. So I basically cut that piece out of the block, and then I just added some squiggle lines here on the bottom, and now I'm going to add some messy block mess all around these, and I'm going to do that in a different color just so it's really easy for you all to see what I'm doing. Basically, I'm going through the in-between spaces in between these waves and going to make some spaces here that I can turn messy. So that's it on a new layer. I'm grabbing the fluid ink eraser, and I'm just going to come through and start chopping it up. And so in the end, what I'll have is just some pieces left over here and there. Not a lot. I mean, it doesn't take much to give that block print feel. Just enough to make that like messy, loose feel here and there so that you have a really fun, playful composition. So once you get that all cleaned up and it's got just enough flex for your taste, you can change it to your color. So I've got black as my color. Alpha lock that layer by dragging 2 fingers, tap it, and tap fill layer. So I'm going to turn off my sketch so you can't see my sketch. I'm going to grab a different color for my sun so you can see that my sun is a different color. And look at all that fun block print looseness. You may want to go a little more messy or a little more clean. And I also have in my Woodblock set, I have light carving marks, medium carving marks, and rough carving marks. So if you don't want to have to do your own carving marks on every single composition, I have those made into brushes for you. So now that we have some compositions, let's go ahead and print these and see how they turn out differently. So just to recap, here are my 2 different blocks. Very different, but both have kind of a block print feel. So I'll start with this one, and I'm just going to group everything here. I just want to put everything in a group so that's all saved. Then I'm going to duplicate that group and make the first one invisible. So I've got it hiding down there, and I'm not going to use my original. Now I'm going to go ahead and choose some colors for this composition. So I've got orange for my sun. I think I'll get my freehand selection tool and select this top piece. So it's like this block is being cut into different pieces. So I'm selecting that top piece, drag 3 fingers down, cut and paste. So now I can choose a different color for that one. Why don't we do that one in a pinky, peachy kind of color? And then we're gonna get a blue for the water. So now we've got this pretty water scene. So while you're drawing, I just wanna remind you that this is part of the iPad Art Break series. So if you wanna get more tutorials like this in your inbox, then go ahead and click subscribe right below this video. Now I'm going to go to the Actions menu and go to Edit Drawing Guide and turn down the grid size so that I have a few diamonds on the page. You can also just take that little green bar here and turn it until you have these perfectly hitting the corners. So your grid should be perfectly hitting the corners this way and this way. Honestly, it doesn't have to be perfect because this has a handmade feel, but as close as you can get. One last thing to adjust on this drawing guide page before we start making our repeat is the grid size. So the grid size needs to go all the way to the edge so that this little point of the diamond is right on the edge of the canvas. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, you guys, because this is a loose block print field composition, so it doesn't have to be a perfect situation, but you want to get pretty close to make things easy. So we've got all these elements in a group, and I recommend just deleting anything out of the group that you don't need, like any old sketches or old pieces that aren't actually part of this composition, because that's just extra layers that you're going to be duplicating. Then we can tap the Move tool, size that down, and make it fit right inside this diamond. So we're going to fit this little guy right into the diamond, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Again, it's a loose, playful block print feel, so keep it loose and rough and doesn't have to perfectly fit in your diamond. The one key here is that you do not go off the edge of the page at all. If we go off the edge of the page, then we're not going to have a seamless repeat. So we're keeping everything onto the edge of the page. So there is my cute little repeat, and personally at this point I like to go to my gallery, press select, duplicate, so that I'm always working with a duplicate rather than originals. I just like working with duplicates. It's safer, you don't lose anything. So just a tip for you if you have had trouble in the past with losing files. So I'm going to group these 4 groups. So highlighting 4 groups, grouping them. So now I have a group made of groups. Duplicating that, now I've got 2 groups made of groups. I can make one invisible. Might even want to just rename that guy while you're getting organized, you know. So I named that 1 because that is my first repeat group. So now I'm going to create a new layer, get white as my color, pure white, by double tapping in the white area, and tap fill layer. So this is just a blank white page. So I'm going to put this layer inside the group that contains one of these groups of 4 groups. So the one that we numbered 1, that's like our backup. We're saving that down there. This is the new group, and it has a little white layer on the back. You wouldn't even know it was there because it just looks like the background, but it's very important because it helps you keep your block print in line. So we have a couple options here, and I'm going to change this based on whether or not you have a bigger iPad. If you're running out of layers, which you may be at this point if you have a smaller iPad, you might need to just merge these groups. So then you just have one piece. The downside of that is now you can't recolor and you can't play with stuff, but it's something that you can do if you need to, if you're running out of space. If you're not running out of space, go ahead and duplicate that group, tap move, tap snapping, make sure snapping is on. Snapping is going to snap it into the right place. So it's not easy, you guys. Procreate doesn't make it a perfect snap, but you will get some lines here when it snaps into place. Do you see that orange? That's like orange snapping up and down. So that's the indication that you have that in the right place. So repeat that process. Duplicate, move it up here, zoom in, looking for those orange snaps. There we go, perfect. And we're going to repeat that process 4 times until all 4 corners have things in them. Remembering that if you've got one of those older iPads and you're running out of space and it's like you can't have any more layers, then you can just merge them all, but you just lose the ability to change your colors. So that's kind of a bummer. So with this last one, I don't need to duplicate anything because I'm just going to use what I already have right there. and put that in place. So now we've got these 4 cute little blocks in the corners. Remember number 1 that we saved? We're going to put that at the very top of the stack, turn it on, and there is our pretty block print pattern. Of course, you can test it by turning off the drawing guide, click Share, JPEG, Save Image, and now add, insert a photo, and pop it in there. I want to note here that for me personally, I do art licensing with most of my patterns. And so I don't usually make a pattern that is not vector based. So one thing I'm not saying here as I talk through this is I'm looking for 1500 by 1500 on that little measurement. So that's good. I would always make my patterns in vector just because I do license my patterns and I often am asked for vector and it's helpful with resizing. So I'm going to put a link below where I talk about vectors for anyone who's like, what are you talking about? It's actually easier to make patterns with vectors, you guys. It's so much easier than raster, I think. So if you want to try that, check out my blog post where you can learn all about that. But for now, look at your cute little block print. So of course, you might want to try the same thing with that first block that we made that we haven't printed yet. And one last thing, I'm not going to do this on camera because you guys know the process now, so you can go play with it on your own. But one fun thing you can do, if you cut these blocks apart, freehand selection, drag 3 fingers down, cut and paste. I'm going to get one color for the bottom and one color for the top. Let's just choose some random colors here so you can see this effect. You can offset your printing a little bit, so turn off that snapping and just like let it be offset. It's like not lined up properly. Then play with these blend modes, and you actually have to make sure the thing with the blend mode's on the top. Then you can scroll through here and find maybe a combination where you get some interesting overlapping. That's kind of cool. It's like the blue overlapped with the pink. And once you find some overlapping that you like let's say that blue looks cool, you can go to hue, saturation, brightness, play around with the hue and get a color combo that you like. So I kind of like that. I think you guys can imagine here where you can go with this. You can get super loose and rough with your block printing and slicing. You can do all kinds of layering and you can do all kinds of textures. In my Woodblock set, I have all these variable ink textures. So let's say you go over this whole thing with an ink texture and like you want some really gritty, rough stuff like that. Then you can put a blend mode on that. Zoom in so you guys can really see. Turn down the opacity and maybe do like a few of those and change to a different blend mode. You can get so much texture and like real block print feel. So these are super sellable. You can do so much with this sort of texture and this playful look that I think is super trending right now. So play with this and tag me so I can see what you guys made. It's question time. At the end of these iPad art breaks, we always take a question from the comments and answer it. So go ahead and put your question in the comments right now if you have one. This is from Kay Campbell, and she says, which print-on-demand platform do you use, please? That is a great question, Kay. I have used a few different ones over the years, and I'm going to put a couple blog posts below where I talk in more detail. But I got started on Spoonflower. That's where I first listed my patterns on print on demand and developed a full-time income from those patterns. So, of course, after that, I wanted to put the same patterns on other platforms with varying success. But I do share more about that on my blog, and you're going to find a link to that right below this this video.
So in my block printing illustrations and pattern class, we go into how to create illustrations like this, where you do all kinds of detailed patterns, beautiful layering, using all of those block print brushes to get so much gorgeous block print texture. We also dive into how to create more complex illustrations like this one that you can use for commercial projects like greeting cards and art prints. And I show you my process for using the block print style to create detailed patterns. So whether you like that sleek block print look or the gritty and messy look, you can make that happen with your patterns and illustrations.
So I hope you all enjoyed this project. I cannot wait to see your block prints, so please tag me on Instagram when you make those so I can see them. I'll see you next time. Bye. If you like this video, you might also like the easy scallop pattern repeat video and the making sellable graphics video, so check those out next.